Hi, and welcome back to Heart and Health Wellness. I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Welch, and this is a podcast where we talk all about how you can achieve whole person, biopsychosocial, spiritual wellness and health. I'm so glad that you are here. Today, this is episode 4, and according to Google, most podcasts fail by not going past the 3 episode point. So I'm going to celebrate that we made it to episode 4 today. And that is a win. If you're here, thank you so much for your support. And I think you're going to really enjoy today's episode. We've been talking about how to do a regular practice of self-reflection and checking in with yourself to make sure you're on track with your goals. We started out in week 1 talking about how you can do that on a monthly basis. Week 2, we dived into kind of that weekly template. And then last week, we talked about how to do this on a daily basis, whether you make it a really simple practice or something that's more intense using that free template that I provided to you. We've also talked a bit about what biopsychosocial spiritual health is, but I don't know that I ever gave a full history of that. So today I'm going to spend just 3 minutes talking about what biopsychosocial spiritual health is and where that idea came from. We'll start there. And then we're going to talk about how your work towards your goals can really happen if you focus on making small incremental changes that are going to have a big effect and a lasting effect over time. So that's what we're going to do today. Before we do that, let's go over real quick again what biopsychosocial spiritual health is and where it came from. So the biopsychosocial spiritual model, it is a mouthful. Sometimes in the professional world, we just refer to this as BPSS. Makes it a whole lot simpler than trying to say it out loud. But originally it started with a psychiatrist named George Engel. And in 1977, he released his idea or his proposal that health is more than just the biological components, the body, what's happening in the body physically. And there's actually more to it. We need to also include what's going on with us psychologically and what's going on in our context or circumstances around us, so socially. And so he called this the biopsychosocial model of health. This really turned the medical field and professionals who took care of people's health from looking pure at health in a purely biological lens and allowed them to think about the other kind of layers or pieces of the puzzle that were influencing the person's health and well-being. So he said, your biological health includes your genetics, illness, and physical conditions. Obviously, all of those are very important. But he also said that we need to consider your psychological health, which covers your emotions, your thoughts, and your behaviors. So all of those things that we typically think about when we think about your mental health. He said we also need to think about your social health, which involves relationships, family, culture, and societal influences. So really this idea that we can't focus on a person's health by just looking at them solely, we really need to look at the bigger picture, which makes complete sense because you can't just pick yourself up out of a situation and say, okay, get all better, and then throw you back in and expect it to stick. That's just not how it works. So we need to think about all of these pieces coming together. So his approach really transformed the way that medicine and mental health thought about how we took care of patients and thought of them as more than just a biological animal individual. We needed to think about all of these other parts that were going on for them to really take care of their healthcare. And so that encouraged healthcare providers to see patients as whole individuals rather than just a set of symptoms. Later, there were 3 nurses in the 90s, Wright, Watson, and Bell, who expanded on Engel's model by adding that spiritual dimension. So that's why when you see me type out biopsychosocial spiritual, there's a little hyphen between the biopsychosocial and the spiritual pieces. So they worked within family therapy and medical family therapy, and they saw that many people found both strength and meaning from some kind of spirituality practice. And so that really gave them an essence of resilience to get through some of those really difficult times, especially when we considered health challenges. And so their research really demonstrated that the faith and the personal values and the existential beliefs that a person holds also significantly impacts their ability to cope with challenges in their life and influence their health overall. So this led to the whole combination of the biopsychosocial spiritual model coming together. They are also the ones who really emphasized the fact that that spiritual piece was not just a religious component, although it could be, but really the fact that it just helped people make sense of life's struggles, and it fostered hope and provided a sense of purpose. And that hope piece is really, really important, especially when we think about things like we're talking about today with making changes. That hope that you can do it, or knowing that there's a better future ahead of you because you're making those changes, is really, really important. So today, that biopsychosocial spiritual model of health is used in medicine, it's used in mental health, and anyone who's talking about holistic wellness is probably should be considering the biopsychosocial spiritual model of health and wellness. Really, and I know I keep talking about this, but it's foundational to your understanding of how to achieve whole person wellness. All four of those domains have to be in balance and have to be attended to in order for you to find success with your health and wellness. You cannot ignore one of them and hope that the other three will be okay. They all influence each other, and there's a fluidity between those domains that's really, really important to pay attention to. So this approach is really a way to encourage both professionals and individuals to think about well-being as being interconnected, and understanding that the small changes that we make have influences that are significant for improvements in your overall health. So again, when we're talking about today's different domains, remember that making a small change in one can and will have an influence on the other domains as well. And so they all will balance each other out. So that is just a quick kind of history lesson, summary of what biopsychosocial spiritual health and wellness is and where it came from. I know we covered it briefly in episode 1, but I thought it would be good to recap it again. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's go ahead and talk about how little changes in each of your biopsychosocial spiritual domains can have a big lasting effect on your overall wellness. Okay, so for the biological domain, today we're going to focus on something called micro exercise. So I don't know if you're like me, but it is really hard to get myself motivated to go to the gym or even just go for a walk outside. I know it's going to take up a lot of time, and I don't feel like I have the time to put into that. And so sometimes that is a barrier to keeping me from getting out and actually doing the workout that I know I need to do, or even that I want to do. So one of the things that I encourage myself to remember, and I would encourage you to think about as well, is that sometimes just doing something very little or a micro exercise can actually be something that you implement every single day that will lead to good change for you in the long run. So the benefits of short, frequent physical activities are actually evidence-based, and there's plenty of research to back it up. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about some of the research that I found. So research shows that using something like high intensity exercise, you may have heard the term high intensity interval training, or HIIT, actually does make a difference for people. So even though the CDC recommends that you have at least 2.5 hours of moderate exercise every week, there's something called a micro workout that offers a very time efficient alternative. So micro workouts involve much shorter and more frequent exercises throughout the day. So instead of having to spend an hour, 45 minutes even doing an exercise, you can spend 5 minutes or less doing something, and then do that a few times a day, and it will be helpful to your health. So they found that these frequent exercises throughout the day can improve things like cardiorespiratory fitness and reduce the risk of heart disease. It can also reduce the risk of things like cancer and even early death. And this is based on research studies. So you can feel confident that even though you feel silly doing something for just 5 minutes, it's actually backed by science and it's going to be helpful to you. They've also shown that short periods of exercise can improve cardiovascular health boost your metabolism, and increase your muscular strength and endurance. So really exciting to know that you don't need to spend a lot of time. Again, doing something little can have a big impact, which is great. So you might be saying to yourself, you know what, Melissa? That sounds fabulous. I would love to do something for 5 minutes, but what the heck would I actually do? Well, I'm glad you asked because I'm going to give you some examples. Okay, so here are 2 examples of workouts that you could do that are considered micro workouts. So first, and I like this one, squatting for 40 seconds, resting for 20 seconds, and then repeating that 5 times at 3 different times throughout the day. Squat for 40 seconds, rest for 20, and then repeat that 5 times. So that's a minute. If you can do your math, 40 seconds plus 20 seconds is 1 minute. Do that 5 times. That adds up to 5 minutes. Okay. And then do that 3 different times throughout the day. So if you incorporate this into something like brushing your teeth, doing your hair, making your coffee, whatever it might be that you already are doing, it would be easy to incorporate that. And I actually know someone in my life, I'm not going to call her out and embarrass her, but I know someone in my life who incorporated doing squats every single day, and she increased it over time. And she has told me that she's noticed significant differences in her glutes and her legs. And so she continues to do that, which I think is fabulous. So this is a really simple one of just including some physical movement into your daily routine multiple times throughout the day without doing something that's going to take a really long time or make you sweaty and nasty where you feel like you need to take a shower. So I like that one. Here's another one. This one might get you a little sweaty and then you might have to shower, but it's still short and brief, which is nice. You can fit it in before you need to go get the child from daycare or whatever you need to do. Okay. So doing 30 jumping jacks followed by 30 squats, resting for 10 seconds, and then repeating that 3 times. So 30 jumping jacks, 30 squats, rest, basically catch your breath, and then do it again 2 more times. Simple, easy, would probably get your heart rate up, might make you break a sweat, but not anything that's too intense or difficult to do. This one, it doesn't even say that you have to do that multiple times a day, although you certainly could. Would be a good option. Anyway, so those are 2 examples of micro workouts that you can do that are going to be helpful to you. So there was a large study that said that if you do just a 10-minute workout 3 times per week, it will increase your endurance by nearly 20%. And the participants in that study had increased insulin resistance at the end of the study. So good benefits from doing 10 minutes 3 times a week. And that's very encouraging to me. It feels like something that I can actually do. So hopefully that's encouraging to you too. All right. So we talked about why you might want to try doing short workouts, why it's convenient, why it's helpful, and how it's going to influence you. That's a good example of how you can do something small with your biological health. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the psychological domain and what you can do to help that area in just a small way. So last week when we were talking about reviewing your day and reflecting, I encouraged you to do at least some journaling every single day. And the reason that I encourage that is because there's plenty of evidence to suggest that journaling can help with mental clarity. Now, there's lots of things that you can journal about. We're going to talk about gratitude specifically and journaling about things that you're appreciative for and grateful for in your life and how that helps you. But there's lots of things that you can reflect on and journal about that are going to help you with your mental clarity and overall psychological well-being. So the research shows that doing journaling consistently on a daily basis, especially with gratitude journaling, will actually result in things like cultivating a positive mindset, having reduced stress, improved mood, enhanced self-awareness. And I'm going to give you a couple of prompts that you can use to get started. So some questions that you can ask yourself to get that started would be, what am I grateful for today? Nice and broad, whatever you're grateful for, list it out. And remember, when you're doing journaling like this, I'm not saying you have to sit down and say, "Dear diary, today I woke up at 6 a.m. and started my coffee and went." You don't have to make it super detailed and long like you're writing to your diary like you did in 3rd grade. It's really okay to not make it like that. This can be very simple bullet journaling, like, what am I grateful for today? First mark, coffee. Second mark, waking up to the sunshine. Third mark, my kitty that purrs. Whatever it might be, it can be very, very simple. The point here is just to get your brain thinking in that way and to actually make a practice of doing it regularly. Okay. What am I grateful for today? Another question or prompt. What is one positive thing that happened today? Or if you're doing it in the morning, that happened yesterday, or that you hope that happens today, you can modify this to whatever, whenever you're doing it so that it works for your schedule. Question number 3, what is one thing that I can do to improve my mental well-being today? So just some examples of how you can get started with that journaling process. So gratitude journaling has been shown over and over when you write it down, specifically when you're writing and doing gratitude journaling, that it can increase feelings of life satisfaction, lower stress levels, and improve overall mood. And I think part of the reason for that is that we live in a world where we're constantly comparing our lives to others, especially with social media and things like that. And that's the highlight reel, right? Typically, people are posting things that make it look like their life is together, things are good, everyone's happy and getting along and all of that. That's what we want the world to see. So that's what we're comparing ourselves to. But in reality, everyone has challenges. Every person has stuff. Every family has stuff. That is just the nature of life. But when we're constantly seeing this highlight reel, we end up comparing ourselves to that. So the practice of journaling and doing some gratitude reflection, you're slowing down to think about what you actually have in your life that are blessings or that feels like wonderful things that you often take for granted, and really gives you an opportunity to appreciate those things and recognize them for how wonderful they are and how wonderful your life is. It may not look like Susie Sue's life, but it's still really, really good. And you should be happy about that and excited about that and celebrate it. That's what you get from the practice of gratitude journaling. So journaling also allows individuals to express and process complex emotions, which can lead to the clear understanding of thoughts and feelings. So sometimes when I'm in a therapy context and I'm helping someone work through some trauma or difficult situation in their life, I'll have them go home and do some journaling about it, because there's something about putting language to our feelings and emotions that gives us power over that situation. And it also helps us to work through whatever those emotions are by saying, it's okay that I feel this way, and I might also feel this way too. The other thing that's important to remember about with journaling is just because you write it down in the moment, that's how you're feeling, doesn't mean that's how you're going to feel about it the next day. So it allows us to get it out without it being truth, capital T. That's not how it is all the time, but that's what it is for you right now. And there's a healing process that comes, or there's a healing capacity that comes from that process. So I think it's really helpful to do that journaling, especially if you're working through something difficult, just to get it out on paper. So it's not just in your head, but it's actually in the physical world too. And you have some kind of power over that now that you've put language to it. So those are just some examples of things that you can do for journaling prompts. Again, it doesn't have to be big and fancy, and it doesn't have to take a long time, just something to get you started to really do some introspection and some self-reflection on what's going on for you and how you're dealing with life. So for social health, when we're thinking about relationships and connecting with others, one of the things that you can do that's really small, that's going to lead to big changes over time, is changing the way that you listen to other people, especially the ones who are really important to you in your life. But doing some active listening and reflective listening can make big changes in your relationship if you just pause to really think about and be intentional about being an active listener. So let's talk about what that looks like. There is a psychologist, Dr. John Gottman, who I think is absolutely fabulous. He has done so much research in relationships, what makes relationships work, what makes them fail, and how you can make your relationships better. And so we're going to look real quick about what he says about active listening and how you can do that. So according to John Gottman's approach, there's several different key techniques that you want to incorporate into active listening. So that includes paraphrasing and reflecting back what you heard, validating the other person's emotions, maintaining eye contact, nodding to show you understand what the other person is saying, asking clarifying questions, and avoiding interruptions, which might be one of the most difficult things for couples. When I work with couples, is because sometimes when we listen to the other person, our brain is thinking about what we're going to say as a rebuttal, to defend ourselves, or to respond to what they're saying. And it's very difficult to slow down and just listen and let the other person talk. And I will say, I know this is easier said than done. This takes practice and intentionality. It's not an easy, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not like a natural response. The natural response is to interrupt and defend. But to actually take the time to slow down, listen to the other person, and do all of these things is going to be immensely helpful in your relationship. So when we talk about getting ready to do some active listening, one of the things that we want to do is be in a posture of listening or turning towards the person. So really being, sitting with them one-on-one and not being distracted by everything else that's going on, putting down your phone, turning off the TV, at least muting it, and really just like letting the other distractions be out of sight, out of mind for a minute, and just be tuned in to that person that is in front of you. So really paying full attention and showing genuine interest in what that other person is saying. We also want to use something called empathic listening. And that is really trying to understand the emotions and the perspective of the person that's talking to us rather than just listening to the words that they're saying. And again, not trying to respond to what they're saying, but really trying to understand where they're coming from and why they're feeling the way that they're feeling. We can also use things like verbal affirmations by saying, I hear you saying, or I'm understanding that you're saying this, to kind of paraphrase what you heard them say, and then giving them the opportunity to either say, yep, that's spot on, thank you for listening, or no, you missed this part, or this part isn't quite right. That piece is actually really important too. So we're not only listening, but we actually want to make sure and confirm that we're understanding the other person correctly. Miscommunication is it's a huge contributor to conflict in relationships. And it's often because we're not slowing down to really understand each other. If we slow down and we really get it, we really hear what the other person's saying, we really understand where they're coming from and why they're feeling that way, there's a much better chance that we're going to be able to connect and have a good conversation. A good productive conversation. We can also focus on things like nonverbal cues. I don't know what the percentage is, but we've all heard it before about how much of our communication actually comes from nonverbal cues, not just the words that we're saying. So really being able to maintain eye contact with the other person, looking them in the eye and really connecting with them is very important to do. Nodding, like you see me doing on here. If you're watching this, not just listening, you often see that I'm nodding as I'm having a conversation because it's kind of a validation or a support of what is being said. So same thing when you're having a conversation with someone, you want to look at them and you want to be nodding to show them that you're listening, you're keeping up, and you're understanding what they're saying. You can also use appropriate facial expressions to convey engagement. Now, if you're just sitting there, you're just trying to put a fake smile on your face while you're listening, it's not going to show the other person that you're actually engaged or hearing what they're saying, especially if they're talking to you about something that's distressing or concerning, or maybe that they're afraid of. It's important for you to have a face that reflects what they're talking about and the tone that they're talking in, to match that. And that's going to be a critical piece to letting the other person know that you're really hearing them, understanding them, and choosing to be engaged with them. So again, you can also ask clarifying questions of, you said this part, but I want to make sure that I understood you correctly. Are you saying this or are you saying that? And giving the other person that opportunity to make sure that everybody's on the same page and that you got it right is really important. That gives them the opportunity to give you further insight into what's going on. And it really ensures that you are getting that accurate comprehension. And when you're asking those clarifying questions, I think that example that I gave was probably not a great example because I said, did you say this or did you say that? It's actually better to ask it in an open-ended format, which means that they're not going to answer it yes or no, but they're going to be able to elaborate more. So open-ended questions are really important to use as well. Sorry, my example wasn't perfect. All right. And like I said, avoiding those interruptions is also critical. You want to let the other person finish their thoughts before responding. This is something that I struggle with, whether I'm being a good listener or not. I'm just often eager to put my my thoughts out into the world or to share or to, keep that conversation going. And it takes a lot of intentionality for me to slow my brain down and slow my mouth down to really be able to hear and listen to what that other person is saying and allow them to finish their thought before I chime in with my own. That one is very difficult for me, but it's a good thing to practice and be mindful of. Okay, so we talked about what active listening looks like. That's going to be really, really helpful for building stronger connections and really be able to have good, healthy communication in your relationships. This is not just romantic relationships, it's parent-child dynamics, it's friend dynamics. Anytime you want to have a healthy relationship with someone, it's important that you're practicing these things. And it's a small thing that you can be doing that's going to have a big impact in that relationship over a long period. Okay, last but not least, we're going to talk about the spiritual domain and something that you can do that is small that's going to have a big impact over time. This one in particular is very important that you are doing it daily and consistently, and that is doing a mindfulness meditation to get inner peace, better regulation of your emotions, being better in tune with what's going on with you, pain management, lots of benefits that come from doing a regular mindfulness meditative practice. Mindfulness, sometimes people get scared by it and they're like, oh, that's very woo-woo. No, it does not have to be. Now, some people might take it there, but it does not have to be. And if you're someone who engages in regular prayer, this can certainly be part of it. But there are some key components of meditation that I want to talk about. So the things that you want to focus on with meditation is one, being in a relatively quiet space where there's not a lot of distractions. Two, you want to focus on your breathing while you're meditating, focusing on breathing in through the nose, holding, and then out through the mouth. And that's a slow, steady practice. I will say, when I work with people on starting meditation, they're often frustrated because maybe they're not good at taking their breath really slow or holding it. And so it takes some time to train your body to be able to do that. So I encourage people when you're starting, just like breathing in for 3 seconds, holding for 3 seconds, and then out for 3. Typically, people are able to do that. Now, if 3 is still too much, you can take it down to 2 and then work it up to maybe something like 5 eventually. But we're trying to really slow down the breath. And that allows the brain to switch from, fight or flight, take care of the situation that's at hand, to really thoughtful, thinking through things logically. When you practice that breath work on a regular basis, when you're not in this really intense, stressful situations, you're going to be able to recall that kind of physical movement, much like it's like a muscle memory, right? So if you're learning to ride a bike or play the piano, your body learns what it's doing. It's the same thing with breath work. Your body learns how to take those deep, slow breaths. So when you're doing meditation, you want to focus on training the body to do that slow breath. The other thing is, regardless of how long you're meditating for, and it's really reasonable for someone who's just getting started to do it as little as a few minutes. 5 would be a great place to try to start. But if you can only do 3 minutes, I'm not going to scold you for that. I think it's great if you're just trying. But when you're doing this, you want to train your brain to refocus your thoughts. So if you're doing a guided meditation, sometimes that's helpful because the person who's speaking will help redirect your thoughts back. But if you're doing it on your own and you're just sitting in the quiet, it's normal for your brain to kind of go all over the place. Think about what you need to get from the grocery store. Think about what time you need to pick up your kids later in the day, whatever it might be. Our brains are constantly doing things. So the point of meditation is to get your brain to slow down, to focus, to turn inward, and be able to focus on your breath. So those are the 3 main pieces when I'm coaching people on how to get started with meditation, to focus on quiet place, very few distractions, focusing on your breath, focusing on slowing down your breath, and then refocusing your thoughts, and doing that without judgment. Not being frustrated at yourself for thinking about that grocery list again, or why something's not working at home that needs to be fixed, but allowing yourself to redirect and say, hey, that's normal. Now we're coming back to think about this main thing. So prayer can be part of this, but I do think there are some specific components of meditation when I'm talking about doing a meditative practice that are slightly different than what I would consider my prayer. life to look like. And I just wanted to point that out. So like I said, if you're just getting started, 5 minutes a day is great. But if you've been doing it for a while, I do think it's helpful to go ahead and work that up to something like 20 to 30 minutes at a time. Now, if you want to use an app to help you with that, some of the ones that I like or that I've heard patients tell me that they like would be Headspace. I don't think Headspace is completely free, but they might have a free trial that you can check out. And actually, I will include a link for Headspace down here. I'll include a link for all of these apps that you can check out. So Headspace would be one that I recommend. Calm would be another. I think Calm has some more free options available to you. Calm is one that I hear a lot of people say that they like for the meditation guided practice, but also for sleep and sleep sounds and things like that for helping you fall asleep or stay asleep. So Calm is a good one for that. And then the third one that I'll include is Insight Timer. And that one is one that I've played around with and I enjoyed using. And I think that one has more free options too. So Headspace, Calm, and Insight Timer. I'll include the links for those down in the show notes if you want to check those out. But again, you can get free stuff on YouTube. At some point, I'll release an episode that's a guided meditation that you can come back and use. I don't have that up yet, but we'll get there eventually. But there's lots of resources that you can use for this. And again, it doesn't have to be something fancy. You can literally sit in your quiet living room for 3 minutes and just focus on doing breathing and redirecting your thoughts. But if that feels too overwhelming and you want someone else to talk you through it, that's totally okay. There are a lot of resources for you to be able to do that. One of the things that's really important to remember when it comes to meditation is that consistency is key. Doing this once is not going to be life-changing, especially if you're just doing it for like 5 minutes. You have to do this on a regular, hopefully daily basis. There's a research study that was done in, what year was that? Oh, I lost it. It was recent, like within the last 10 years. And they actually found that people who practice meditation every single day for 4 weeks did not notice significant changes in their health. But for the ones who did it every single day for 8 weeks, they did. So if you are someone who's like, I'm out, I got to see instant results, you may not like this. But I think if you are someone who's willing to stick to it and do it for just 5 minutes a day for 8 weeks, you'll be really excited about the results that you are seeing. When you get better with it as you go on, you can make it longer and longer. But there's not like, a goal of being able to sit for 2 hours kind of thing. It's just being able to do something every single day to help you slow down, focus on that breath work, focus inward to really help you get some inner peace and mental clarity. So to give you an idea of some of those recommended meditation links, someone who's doing mindful-based stress reduction would be doing it for 40 to 45 minutes per day. Maybe that's the goal that you're working toward. Someone who's doing transcendental meditation, also known as TM, they might be doing it for 20 minutes twice a day. This is kind of what I aim for, doing it once in the morning and then once in the evening, because I think that helps me kind of check in and slow down. So, and then Tibetan monks, who we also often kind of joke about as like just meditating all day long, not so. They actually do short sessions several times a day. But I think the unique thing there is that they're doing it multiple times a day. So once a day, fabulous. Great place to start. 5 minutes a day, wonderful. Set an alarm on your phone if you need to remind you to do it. But it doesn't have to be all day long. It's just checking in with yourself on a regular basis. Okay, I think I've talked about that for enough. So let's move on. All right. So overall, what I want you to see from today, regardless of which domain it is, doing something small doesn't have to take a lot of time, and doing something consistently over time, you will notice big, impactful results that can really change your life and give you whole person wellness. It's also important that you're tending to each of those domains and not just doing one or the other. Now, sometimes when you're starting a new practice, it's best to focus on one and build it up and then do another. So if it feels like too much to try to do micro exercise and reflective listening practice with someone and meditation, and what's the piece that I'm missing? Journaling. If it's too hard to do all of those as new practices in a day, that's okay. Just pick the one for this week that you want to focus on and make a promise to yourself that you're actually going to use it. And then use those templates that I've given you for daily check-ins or weekly check-ins to make sure that you're actually doing it consistently and sticking to it. And make sure that you're tracking as you're doing that, what progress you're seeing, what results you're experiencing, what success you're noticing, so that you can encourage yourself to keep going. That part is going to be essential. When you start to notice something that is different, I want you to share that with somebody else. Now, if you want to share it with me, wherever you're listening in the comments or with my social media or send me an email or message, that would be fabulous. By the way, my email is heartandhealthpodcast@gmail.com. So if you want to send me a message, you can do that. However, it's also okay if you want to just share with a friend or a family member or spouse or whomever to be excited with you and to celebrate that with you. Very important to not be doing this on your own, especially if you want it to be something that you continue to do. For example, I am very proud of myself for making it to episode 4 of my podcast and to continue going even when it's a slow start and I mess up on things and it's not perfect. And I want that finished product, but we're not there yet. We're getting there. We're learning, and that's okay. And I shared about that with one of my really good friends last night. And she was excited for me and encouraged me. And that feels good. And it holds me accountable to keep going. So do not be making these changes on your own in isolation. It's really important to include other people as you're doing that. Okay. So that is all we're going to talk about today. Make sure you tune in next week. Sometimes it's really hard to implement these changes, and you might be experiencing some resistance to change. That is a really normal thing. So next week, we're going to talk more about why resistance to change happens and what you can do to overcome that resistance to make things actually play out like you want them to so that you can reach those goals. So make sure you tune in next week for that. I also want to remind you real quick about our end of Q1 workshop called Reset, Reflect, and Recharge. Now, if you are like lots of people out there, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, I feel so stuck. I'm overwhelmed and I just have no idea where the first 3 months of the year went. What on earth is going on? That's okay. That can be very normal, but it's time to pause and reflect and really get yourself realigned so that you can achieve your wellness goals this year and get yourself ready for Q2. Now, if you want to join me for a live interactive workshop, I'm going to be hosting this on March 28th at noon Central Time, and I'm only going to be opening it up to the first 10 people who sign up because I want it to be small where we can really talk about what's going on for you and get you set up for success in Q2. Now, this is going to help you assess your biopsychosocial spiritual well-being, and I'm going to give you a good framework to be able to do that, and we'll help you actually do that together. It's also going to set you up to identify some small but powerful changes that you can make based on what you've seen and what you've been able to do in Q1 so that you can continue in the right direction or shift into a better direction for Q2. We're also going to talk about some of those common roadblocks that you might face, and you can share with me what some of the roadblocks are that you're experiencing, and we'll brainstorm together and figure out a plan for how to overcome those roadblocks. And when you leave, you're going to have a personalized action plan for how you can move forward with confidence going into Q2 to know that you're headed in the right direction to nail those yearly goals, and we're going to get you there. This is a totally free workshop. I just want a way to be able to connect with you and share my appreciation with you for being here and supporting me on this journey. And I want to support you on your journey too. So totally free. It'll last about an hour and I think it'll be a good thing for you. So if you want to sign up for that, I finally have the registration link available to you on my link tree. So that link is down at the bottom of the show notes as well. But go ahead and sign up there. We will do it online virtually. So if you put in your information, I will send you the info that you need to sign in for that call. So make sure you sign up for that. It's only 10 spots, so I do expect that will fill up because I'm opening it up to not just my podcast listeners, but everybody across my social media and I expect that those 10 spots will fill up pretty quickly. So go ahead and do that. Y'all are the first ones to hear about it. So there's that. But I will be announcing it the beginning of March. This podcast will come out the first week of March, and I'll be announcing it later that week on my social media. And one last piece, if you found something from today's episode that you thought was helpful or that you want to try to implement, I would ask that you would give me a 5-star review wherever you are listening or watching. That is a great way to help a new podcast succeed and get pushed out to others. Also, if there's something that you took away that you thought was really meaningful to you, go ahead and put it in the comments. I tell you every week, I want this to be a collaborative process and something that's engaging both ways. So let me know what stuck out to you or what you want to hear more about or what you want to hear about in the future. Let me know so I can help you in that way. Also, if you felt like there was something in this episode that was worth sharing, please send this to at least one friend who would also benefit from hearing about making small changes, having big lasting effects, that would enjoy this episode or the show in general. And that's another great way that you can help me grow the podcast. Thank you so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. That is all for today. And until next time, take care of yourself. See you later.